Somewhere outside Poolesville, Maryland, in the summer of 1968, a scientist built a perfect world. 4 walls, no predators, no disease, unlimited food, unlimited water, enough nesting material for thousands. He called it Universe 25. He filled it with 4 breeding pairs of mice, and then he did something almost no scientist does. He waited to watch them fail. His name was John B. Calhoun, an ethologist at the National Institute of Mental Health, the same institute where, decades later, her psychiatrist Thomas Veer would run his darkness experiments on human sleep. But Calhoun wasn't studying sleep. He was studying something more dangerous. What happens to a population that runs out of nothing except a reason to matter? Calhoun had already spent a decade on this. In 1962, Scientific American published his findings on crowded rat colonies under a title that became infamous: Population Density and Social Pathology. In that paper, he coined a term that would outlive every animal he ever studied: the behavioral sink. Universe 25, started in July 1968, was his most ambitious version yet, and the one he tracked most obsessively for over 3 years, nearly day by day. The habitat could comfortably hold up to 3,840 mice. It never got close. Here is what actually happened in order. Phase A, days 0 to 104. Mice explored, staked territory, bred cautiously. Mostly quiet, mostly normal. Phase B began around day 105. The population started doubling roughly every 55 days. By day 315, over 600 mice were living in walls built for thousands more. Still, on paper, nowhere near capacity. And this is exactly when things started to break. Phase C is where Calhoun's field notes turned strange. A rigid, cramped hierarchy formed despite there being no real shortage of space. Dominant males, unable to defend the territory a healthy hierarchy would normally require, simply gave up. Displaced males packed into the center of the habitat in aimless, hyper-aggressive clusters, attacking each other without the ritual signals that normally stop rodent fights before they turn lethal. Females, crowded and stressed, turned on their own pups, abandoning nests mid-litter, sometimes attacking their young outright. In parts of the colony, infant mortality climbed above 90%. Then Calhoun documented something he hadn't predicted at all. A new kind of male appeared. He called them the beautiful ones. They never fought. They never courted a female. They never tried to hold territory. They did nothing but eat, sleep, and groom themselves endlessly alone. Their fur was immaculate. Their social behavior was, in Calhoun's own notes, withdrawn from every function a mouse is supposed to perform. And this wasn't a small fringe group. As the colony aged, the beautiful ones became one of the most common male types left alive. By the time most people hear this story, they've already decided what it means. Too many bodies, not enough space. Society collapses into violence. That's the version that made Universe 25 famous. During the urban panic of the late 1960s and 70s, cited by journalists, referenced even in U.S. Senate testimony, as a warning about what happens as cities grow. But that is not what the data actually shows. Here's the part almost nobody quotes. Population density in Universe 25 never came close to the physical capacity Calhoun had built. At its peak, around day 560, the colony held roughly 2,200 mice, barely half of what the space could physically support. There was still open floor, still unclaimed nesting material. The mice weren't running out of square footage. They were running out of something else, roles. Calhoun's own writing pointed at this directly. In a hierarchical mouse society, only a limited number of individuals can hold a meaningful social position. Territory holder, mate, defender, mother successfully raising young. Once the population exceeded the number of available roles, the excess mice didn't just get less space. They got no function at all. Historians of science, including Edmund Ramsden and John Adams, who re-examined Calhoun's original notebooks decades later, argued this was the true mechanism, not crowding itself, but the exhaustion of what Calhoun called meaningful social roles inside a fixed status structure. Density was the trigger. Role collapse was the disease. And once that collapse began, it didn't reverse, even as the population later fell. By day 600, births had essentially stopped. Females biologically capable of reproducing simply weren't. The remaining mice, despite finally having abundant space again as the population declined, never returned to normal social or reproductive behavior. The last surviving mice in Universe 25 died on day 1780, May 23, 1973. Not from starvation, not from disease. 4 breeding pairs had grown into a colony of thousands, and then gone fully permanently extinct inside a universe that still had food on the shelves. Calhoun called this final irreversible state the second death, a death of the spirit that preceded the death of the body, sometimes by years. He believed he hadn't documented a housing crisis. He documented an identity crisis, a population that ran out of ways to be needed, long before it ran out of anything it needed to survive. He spent the rest of his career warning that human societies, as they grew larger and more anonymous, could hit the same wall, not from a shortage of resources, but from a shortage of the roles that give an individual's existence social meaning. He wasn't predicting a food crisis. He was predicting a purpose crisis. More than 50 years later, most people encountering Universe 25 for the first time still read it as a story about overcrowding. But look again at what actually killed that colony. It wasn't the density of bodies in the room. It was the scarcity of a reason to be one of them. Somewhere right now, in a room full of people, in a feed full of faces, in a city built for millions, there may be beautiful ones among us too, fed, sheltered, perfectly groomed, and utterly unnecessary to anyone around them. Calhoun didn't just build a mouse universe. He built a mirror, and he left it running long after the mice were gone.